Hello and welcome to Philosophy 101, an introduction to philosophy. My name is Stephen Everett and I will be your instructor for this course. This is a video for everyone in the course, for those who may have taken online classes using this D2L interface that we see in front of us, as well as for those who have never taken an online class using D2L. It's for everyone in the course. To get started, the first thing we can notice is there is an updates window. It's a little lighter than the background. Inside this window will appear various notifications throughout the semester. It'll say that you have a certain number of unread discussion posts or that you have a quiz that needs to be completed. What I would encourage everyone to do is use this as just a notification that, oh yeah, I have some things I need to do, but then go find those things using the content or the assignments tab, which we'll talk more about these two just a little later in the video. But what I would say to avoid doing is that these notifications, they appear in the form of links, like you could click on them and they'll take you somewhere. Well, the concern is that historically with D2L, sometimes it'll say you have a quiz to do. You click on it, you think it's safe for your Philosophy 101 class, but it ends up taking you to an English class or some other class that your other teachers are using D2L in, and you don't notice that this changes at the top of the screen, that you're in a different class. You go ahead and open up a quiz, and you're not ready to take that particular quiz. You thought it was for one class, but it's for another. Essentially, the updates inside D2L sometimes does not distinguish between you have a quiz to do, but for which class. So that's something just to be aware of. And so the way to avoid any difficulties with it is just use it as a thing of, oh, okay, I have some things I need to go do, but then go look under content and assignments to find the things. And if you go look for a quiz that it says you need to do and it's not showing up in assignments, then you know that it must be from one of your other classes and you'll need to go check that class for it instead. But either way, that's the updates window. Use it as a reference, but whatever it's referring to, go and find the things or look for them under content assignments rather than just clicking the links that appear under updates. The calendar. The calendar inside D2L can be useful, but oftentimes it does not provide you with everything you might need or would like to have as far as scheduling and assignments and when things are opening up, when they're closing down, when you have access, when you don't. The calendar can be helpful inside D2L, but what I would encourage everyone to do instead of relying on it is to use this document, this course schedule right here. They send this first news post a link to it, and there's a link to it in another part of the class. But inside this first news post, there is this link to the course schedule. If you click on this link, what you'll find is a document that looks like this. This is the entire course, all 15 weeks, compressed down to about 3.5, 4 pages. This is your guide of how to find what you need to be reading, watching, doing on any given week. If there's no other document that you print out and keep with you or download to your computer throughout the whole semester, if you save no others, I would download and save or print out these 3 or 4 pages. Because if you have it outside of the class, you can look through this for any given week and you read it from left to right. So week 1, which is what we're in, you have the week 1, you have the dates associated with it, you have the topic, you have the prompt for the discussion question, not the whole thing, but you know the name of the link that you're looking for inside the class. You have the unlock and lock times. This is when the week begins, the unlock. This is when the week ends and you lose access to be able to make changes to what happened during this week. Then you have the readings and the videos, as well as the assignments for every week. And you can have this and you know what to look for before you ever go into the class. And you can also use it and just check this stuff off as you do it and you know that you've done it. And you can also schedule around your work schedule, your other classes. This is a very valuable document as far as being able to orientate to the class every week. So, but exactly what is it? Just what's the overall picture of what's going on in the class? Well, there's 15 weeks. Every week we have a certain topic that we're looking at. You have we have a discussion every week. You also have information that you're reading and you're watching every week. And these things marked with SE, that's my initials, Stephen Everett. That's always the lecture material. Every week you want to find that, read read the handouts, watch the videos. If there is a video, that this class is, I did a rebuild of it a few semesters back. And so some weeks do not yet have videos, but they all have lecture handouts and they all have enough material that you can read and make sense of what's going on in any given week. And I'm adding to the class, before we get to certain weeks throughout the semester. That's just the nature of rebuilding online classes. It takes multiple semesters and years to ever get everything kind of the way a teacher might want it to be. But there's a video for most weeks in the class, a lecture video. But even if there's not a lecture video, there's always the lecture handout that you can read. And it will provide you with what you need to be able to do the discussions, the quizzes. And then there's your assignments. Like for this week, we'll talk more about this, but you have discussion assignments, and then you have this attendance and ID verification task to do. We'll talk more about that. But just to get a feel for how this course schedule works and the class works, is it's the same pattern like week 2. We have the topic, you have discussion, you have your unlock lock times, you have your material that you'll be reading and watching that week. And the lecture material is always marked with my initials. That's what you would receive if we were in a physical classroom. That's what we'd be talking about and working with. And then you have discussions and a quiz starting week 2. There is no quiz for week 1, but there are weekly quizzes starting on week 2, as well as discussions. Then there's the same pattern, just repeats. It's like you're reading lecture material, looking at other external stuff, and then you participate in a weekly discussion and you complete quiz each week. This thing also, the schedule also shows when the extra credit opportunities become available. It's extra. You don't have to do them, but they are there if you're interested in doing them when they need to be completed by, as well as it tells you when the midterm exam is. It'll also tell you when there's an argumentative essay. There is a writing assignment associated with this course. It's not anything overwhelming, but there is a writing assignment. It's also when extra credit 2 is, when fall break is, like when there's no class, and then also when the final exam occurs. So this is the entire class, all 15 weeks, laid out in 3-4 pages. So I would encourage everyone, if you download and save and print out no other set of documents, these 3 to 4 pages are worth having copies of outside the class, just for your own convenience. Going forward, we're still on this course landing page. By the way, this is the course homepage. This is what you'll land on every time you enter the course, is this page, and it'll look like this. And you'll always have this news feed. Well, this news feed, it works basically like social media style news feed, that the newest post is at the top, and then the previous posts are underneath, are stretched out underneath it. Right now, there's just one news post, this welcome post. But throughout the semester, whenever you come into the class, it's always worthwhile to look at the news feed and just read the post until you encounter a post that you know that you've read before and say, okay, yeah, I'm caught up. I've looked at the news. That whatever appears in news is always relevant to everybody in the course. I put reminders about various exams, extra credit, things throughout the semester, that it's always worth looking at that news feed before you go any further into the class on any given week. So what is this? We're the welcome message. We have the name of the class, my name, who I am. Then to get started. Well, the very first thing to get started with a course is to watch a course information video, which you're doing right now. So everybody watching this video right now, you're doing exactly what you need to be doing to get started with this class. It all begins with watching this video. Then it says to carefully read the syllabus and the course schedule. Well, we just looked and overviewed the course schedule. You want to look at it in more detail after this video. We will come back and return to talk about the syllabus near the end of the video. But now, one might be more familiar, like you might not be as familiar with this syllabus course schedule format. If you've taken multiple classes at the college, what you may be most familiar with are these style documents in this format in the instructional package and course information sheet. In essence, there's a little more description and material in this instructional package than there is in, say, the syllabus and the course schedule. But in the end, what you need to know to be able to succeed in the course is contained in the syllabus and the course schedule. But if you prefer this format of the instructional package course information sheet, by all means, you can use these two documents, succeed throughout the semester. Know what you need to do, know the policies, everything like that. You can read these two documents, use them throughout the semester, you'll be fine. Or what I've found historically from teaching this class, working with it for over 10 years now, students tend to prefer this format. That's why I include it. It's just many people prefer this format, so I continue to include it. You can use these two documents, successfully go through the course, and know what you need to do throughout the semester. Or you can use these two. In fact, the information contained in these is in these. It's just arranged a little differently. That's really all there is to it. But this week, look through these two documents, look through these two. You'll see that they're repeating the same stuff, just in different arrangements. Either way, by the end of the week, just pick whichever set works best for you and go with it. They'll both get you through the class successfully. But definitely look at both this week and just decide which set makes the most sense to you and go with it. Now, there is a textbook. This is in a PDF format. You can download this whole thing free to you. You don't have to buy a textbook for this course. This is provided for you. But also the lecture handouts each week are provided. And we will use some parts of this book, reference to it throughout the semester. But the key to everything is focusing on the lecture material each week. There will be some pages assigned from this from time to time, but much of the class is based on the lecture material that's provided each week, and so you definitely want to concentrate your time on that. But there is this: you don't have to buy any books for this course. Everything you need is provided for you inside the class. How to email me? Well, this is a fully 100% online class, meaning that we don't meet in person, but all of our interactions begin with email. That you send me an email. You reach out, you ask any questions, anything like that. I'll read and reply to your emails. If we need to schedule a time to talk through something on the phone, we can do that too. I don't mind. That's no problem. So it's important to kind of know how to email me, because it's our primary way of getting in touch. Well, so the first thing to do whenever you need to email me is just get out of D2L. You don't want this page on the screen when you're trying to email me. And then log into your HTTC email, which is a type of Outlook email, or you can use an external email like Gmail, whatever. It's fine as long as it's a reliable email that you use and check throughout the semester. But you log out of or get out of D2L and then log into your email account, type in my address. This is my only address. It's the one that I check basically every day throughout the semester. And then send me your email. And typically, I will reply within about 12 hours. I'm really good about keeping up with email and not keeping someone out there wondering, you have a question. I assume if you ask a question, you need an answer to it. So I'm gonna do it. I'll always do my best to get back as promptly as possible. If I'm happen to be in email and you email me, I'll reply to you right then. In real time. So the thing is email. I do check it every day. So if you email me at 8 in the morning, there's a good chance by 8 that night you'll have received a reply from me within 12 hours. But in case things come up on my end, especially during this first week, I receive a lot of emails. You'll see why when we get to the verification activities. But I do receive emails, especially during the first week or two, and that takes time to read through and respond to all of them. So give me 24 to 48 hours to get back to your email, which 48 hours is 2 days. But if you have not received a reply from me within 2 days of sending an email, definitely go back to your email. Make sure you put in my address, that there's no typos, things like that in it. Make sure you're sending it to the right address first. That's always first. But then, if you got the address in there right and you hadn't received a reply within 48 hours, just send it again. Just take that and say, hey, I sent this a few days ago. I hadn't heard from you. Here it is again. As soon as I see the email, I will read and reply to it. And so that's how to email me. Once again, you get out of D2L. Don't try to email me with inside the D2L system. There is an email thing associated with D2L, but it's not reliable for our purposes. Because it has delays and the D2L system does its own thing, whereas this external email through HTTC with Outlook email, it's separate from D2L and it's more reliable. And so it can be accessed even if D2L is doing updating or it's down for a few hours. This external email through HTTC with Outlook, it still works. So I can always get your email if you send it to this address. So that's why you want knowing how to email me is important. Now the next thing is attendance verification activity. It's a 3-part activity, but it's not so bad. There's 3 parts, but it's not so challenging this week. It's the first thing is I need to receive an email from everyone by the end of this week. After you watch this video, it's a great time to do it. All you need to do is get out of D2L, go to your email, type in my address, and just send me a quick message. Hey, I'm in your intro to philosophy. That's it. I mean, you can ask any questions after watching this video. If you have questions, you can ask them in that initial email. It's fine. There's no problem, and I'll answer them. I'll reply to every one of these emails I receive so you know and I know that we have a reliable way to communicate throughout the semester, because everything starts with email. So we just soon make sure that we can communicate through email this very first week. And also I use this to verify that yes, indeed, this person's in the class with the registrar. The next thing to do is you just complete this week's discussion assignment. We'll talk about discussions assignments in just a little while in this video. Now, there's a link to it, but there's other ways to access it as well. That also needs to be done by the end of this week. And then you complete this identity verification activity, which we'll talk about in just a second. So there's 3 things. You send me an email, hey, I'm in your class. You do this week's discussion. You do this identity verification. Once you've done those 3 things this week, you're done with this week. You've done all you need to do. Now, after this week, you'll have discussions and quizzes. Moreover, after this week, you'll never have to send me another attendance style email. Like every week, you don't have to tell me you're in the class, things like that. That's not necessary. This sort of attendance style email is just for this week, just so we know email works and I can verify it with the registrar. That's all it's for. After this week, your attendance is tracked via completing discussions and quizzes. Every week, I update discussion grades, the quiz grades update, and then I can tell who is attending via who's completing assignments. So you don't have to send me any attendance style email ever again. This identity verification, this is a one and done. You do this. We'll talk about it in just a second. But you do it this week, you're done with it too. So the only thing that's recurrent out of the stuff that we're doing this first week is the discussion assignment, and then there's quizzes. So every week there's discussions and quizzes. Now, identity verification, what is this? It's not difficult. You take a self picture with a student or photo ID, you holding your ID, and then you just go to this link, Dropbox link, you click on it, it'll walk you through the process of uploading it. This is a policy of the school for people to do this. This is not my policy, but given that we're at the school, that we have to go along with the policy. But either way, it's to take essentially a selfie with your student ID and you upload it here. This is the only place it goes is in this class, nowhere else. But you do that and then you're done with it. And that's the same. That'll be the same for any other online classes that you're doing. So that's updates window. That's the calendar. That's the news. That's what the course homepage, what's going on it. The next thing is we'll look through these tabs. Well, you won't have these two tabs. This is on my side of things, but you will have tools and you can click on tools. There's a lot of different things you can look through in tools, and that can be overwhelming. But what about just day-to-day life, like going through this class? What are you actually going to use? Attendance and grades. Those are the two tabs to pay attention to. You can look through all this other stuff if you want to, and that's fine. But attendance and grades are what you'll use the most. At any given point throughout the semester, you can check your grades on individual assignments. You can check your attendance. How do grades work? Well, you complete a quiz or you complete an exam. You can, as soon as you get through with it, look at your grade. You'll be able to see it. Now, so quizzes and exams, you instantly know how many you missed, how many you got right. You got them all right. You missed most of them. Either way, you'll be able to tell that. So those are graded instantly. But what about discussions? Well, we hadn't talked through what discussions are, but once we do, you'll quickly understand that it takes time for me to read through all the discussion posts. I do that after a week ends. The way this class runs is it runs from a Saturday at midnight to Saturday at midnight. And so after each week ends on Saturday at midnight, it takes me till like Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, 3 days to read through everybody's post and to update discussion grades. So you can look for your discussion grades around each Tuesday, Wednesday at the latest. And I'm consistent with it. So every week, sometimes it'll be your discussion grade. You finish a week on Saturday at midnight. So many times by Sunday afternoon, it'll be updated. So you'll be able to see it. But give me until Tuesday. Normally that's as long as it's going to take. But Tuesday, Wednesday, just in case something comes up on my end, by the middle of the following week, you'll be able to see your discussion grade. And when I update discussion grades is when I update attendance. So what that means is your quiz and your exam grades, they appear instantaneously after you do them and complete them. But discussions and attendance always lag behind about 3 days. After you have finished a week, 3 days after that's when you'll be able to see those grades and your attendance change and update. So that's how attendance and grades works. At any point in the semester, you can always click this and check on that stuff. If you have any questions, you can always send me an email about it. The next thing is this communications tab. It can be useful. I mean, this is D2L email. You certainly don't want to email me this way. You get out of D2L and don't send me any emails through the D2L system like this. You just don't want to do it. It's not reliable. You send it to my address that we just talked about. But you can email each other this way if you want to. But the next thing, the second tab drop down here is news. This is if, say, there's some news post that there's a link in and you know there was a news post, but it's not showing up here in the feed anymore. At any point in the semester, if you want to go back and see previous news posts, you can click this news. You'll be able to see all of them. You can also do that by just scrolling to the bottom of the news feed and it'll say show all posts. It'll take you there too. There's oftentimes more than one way to get to the same stuff in the class. But so this can be useful though, say if you know there was a link to say the syllabus and you want to look at it after we're 6-7 weeks in the class, but this post is buried under, multiple others, well then you can always just go to communications news and be able to get back to these earlier posts. Because not all posts show up on the screen as more appear, just like a lot of times on social media feeds, The older posts kind of vanish. They're still there, but you have to click to find them. And so you can always do that through this news tab. The next two tabs, assignments. There are ways to get to the assignments here. The main one's discussions and quizzes. There's ways to get through that and do them through content, which we'll see. But this is one way to just go directly to them. And so the main three tabs are discussions, Dropbox, quizzes. So let's start with Dropbox. So I just clicked assignments, and so let's go Dropbox. Well, what does this do? What's going on under the Dropbox thing? Well, there's two things in here. The first is that identity verification, where you take your self picture with your photo ID. And when you've done that, you can go to this link, or you can go to the link in the news post. And once you have your picture file, and this will walk you through uploading it to this folder. And then there's also, this is where you turn in the writing assignment, the argumentative essay. And it's a 3 to 5 page thing. It's not a very big thing, but you do want to remember it's out there and complete it by the time it's due. You know, there's the due date for it. It's also in the schedule, and I'll send reminders out so people know when it's coming up. But this is also the location where you turn in the essay. So that's all that's under Dropbox. You do the identity verification thing that you'll do by the end of this week, and then the argumentative essay that you'll complete later in the semester. This is where both of those are turned in. And that's just under assignments, Dropbox. Now, the next thing is quizzes. Every week besides this first week and during the week that the midterm's in play, there is a quiz. How does this work? Well, the quiz is open when this available date and time occurs. They close down. You're not able to interact with them anymore once this date here. This is the unlock time. This is the lock time that you see in the course schedule. This is when this week begins. This is when this week ends. The week 2 quiz is on week 2 material. The week 3 quiz is on week 3 material. And what happens as soon as we get to this date, this week 2 quiz, as soon as we get to the 30th here, that another box will appear up here that says current quizzes. And so if there's any point in time throughout the semester where you're wondering, what week are we in? We get in week 6, 7, 8, and sometimes that becomes disorienting. And especially in an online class, I've taken many of them. Personally, I've taken many of them. I've taught many of them. And that it can get disorienting, just like in a physical going in a classroom. You know, sometimes you're wondering, what week is it? What are we doing? Well, there's an easy way to know in this class is that you can go to assignments and go to quizzes, and whatever quiz, the week quiz that's in current quizzes, which appears once these things start opening up. Now, I'm recording this video a few days before the semester begins, so they're all future right now. But once these quizzes start appearing here, it'll say current quiz. And if it says week 5 quiz, you know we're in week 5. It's a way to always quickly be able to orientate and know what week we're in during the semester. Also, with these quizzes, when they become available, you just click on the link and it talks you through. Are you ready to take the quiz? And you say, yeah. And it's like, are you really ready to take the quiz? Yeah, I'm really ready. And then it takes you to the quiz. You know, it gives you opportunities to back out. You know, if you're not ready to take it and you clicked on it accidentally, you can still get out. But then there's a link to the midterm exam here, as well as there's a link to the final exam. And as these dates appear, these will appear in the current quizzes slot up above. And as you complete them, there will be another box appear that has past or previous quizzes. And you'll see the weeks that have been. But that's quizzes. This is just one way to access them. So it's really convenient too. Because as you'll see when we get to content, that's where all the week's material, lecture material, everything like that is under content. But say that you've done the discussion, it's at the end of the week, it's a Saturday, the week's going to be over at midnight that night, so it's like 3 in the afternoon. Rather than going to content, trying to find the quiz, which you can through content, but you know what week it is, and you know it's going to be in current quizzes. If you've already done the material for the week, sometimes it's extremely convenient to just go assignments, quizzes, find your quiz here, click on it, and take it. And so it can be convenient if you use it that way, where you don't have to go back and root around in content to try to find the quiz for any given week, because after you've done that week, you can always go assignments and then your quiz there, and you'll know it's for the week that we're in. The last thing under assignments that we use all the time is discussions. So let's click on it. Discussions. And the thing to know about discussions is everything that's posted here can be read and replied to by everybody else in the class. This is a public forum for us inside the class. And so anything posted here can be read, can be replied to, interacted with by everybody in the class. Well, so what does that mean? Well, it means when you see this thing that's any questions here, these are questions like how to find something in the class, questions about the syllabus, course schedule, the course policies, things like that. You can ask those questions here. That's fine. The preferred method is send me an email and I'll answer it. But if it's like 3 in the morning and you're doing something in the class, you don't remember how to do something, and there's somebody else that's on in the class at that time, and they happen to see that you've asked a question here, and they happen to know the answer, then they may reply to you, and you get quicker feedback and answer to your question. Notice there's a lot of conditions there, like if, it's like a lot of things have to go right for this any questions for it to actually be useful to you. But I put it here just in case some people, sometimes a question's asked. But the overwhelming amount of questions, especially if it's something to do with your private information about like your grades, things like that, you definitely need to send that to me through email, because you don't want to put that where everybody in the whole class can see stuff about your private information. But sometimes there's special use cases for it. It's here. The school likes it to be here, so it's here. But really, just send me an email and we'll go through it. And I will certainly, I'm prompt with email. I won't just leave anybody out there, with no reply to the email, unless you're sending it to the wrong address. And that I can't do anything about, but eventually you'll get it to me, and I'll answer your email and we'll go forward. Most time there's no problem whatsoever. Just send me an email. We'll work at whatever it is out. There's also a place you can introduce yourself to everyone in the class. If you want to do that, that's fine. You don't have to. It's voluntary, but the option to do so is here. Now we're into the required material. This is actual weekly discussions. This is the week 1 discussion. What is due by it is to be completed entirely by the end of this week. But, and this is the thing with discussions, there's 2 aspects to every discussions. And I divide it into, there's what's known as initial post, and then there's peer replies. What is the initial post? Well, every week with discussions, it tells you what to see. It's always referencing some lecture material. So that tells you right out of the gate, before you try to do a discussion or participate in one and complete it, you always want to have looked through the lecture material for that week. Look through the handout, look at the video that's marked SE. That gives you what you need to be able to understand what's going on in the discussions. Even though some of these questions may look like you could just answer them by the internet, you're almost always going to be far off the mark if you haven't already looked at the lecture material. And you'll see that as we go through, that you always want to go through that lecture material. Some of those lecture handouts, there's some pages to them. So you need to take time, set time aside to read through them, watch the videos. It takes time, like any college class does. But once you've looked through them and read them, you will have all you need to be able to successfully do the discussions. What you need to do them is in the lecture material. And so all the discussions are assuming that you've already looked through that lecture material. So it's important to know how to find that, which we'll talk about that in just a little while in the video. But either way, it's always about the lecture material. There's a question for the week, and it's always going to be followed by a why or what are your reasons. So what you do is around the middle of the week, I've set it where it's Wednesdays at 7 p.m. You want to have already looked through this lecture material and already be able to answer this question and put some reasons behind it, which are just sentences that support whatever your answer is. And you do that around 7 p.m. Wednesday. But is it like absolutely critical that it's 7 p.m. Wednesdays? If it takes you till midnight Wednesdays or even like 8, 10 in the morning Thursdays, that's fine. It's just, this is kind of so you can put something in your mind. Yes, there's something that's due in the middle of every week in this class, namely your initial post, which is your answer to the weekly question or questions. Sometimes there's more than one question, and your reasons in support of your answer or answers. You post that around Wednesday, 7 p.m., sometime between Wednesday, 7 p.m., Thursday, 10 a.m., in that kind of window. You need to answer the question and put some reasons there, because that grants you access to be able to read and reply to what everybody else has said. It gets the discussion off the ground by the middle of the week. Otherwise, invariably, like just human beings in general, we would wait until like Saturday and everybody is pushing in their post at midnight at the end of the week. Well, that's not a discussion. That's just a task. That's not very helpful at all to what you need to be able to be practicing and thinking about through the week. Like philosophy stuff, it's inherently involves interacting with other people, giving your ideas and your reasoning, and they give their ideas and their reasoning. And you need to be able to interact and ask questions or provide feedback to each other to really get the full effect and the most educational value out of a class like this. And discussions are fun. I mean, this is when you get to see, like, you'll read some of this stuff and be like, wow, this is what I think about it. And then you'll read what other people think, and your entire perspective may change on a topic. It's like, and that's fine. It's like you are not absolutely committed to whatever your answer and reasoning is when you first post it. You're just giving it a shot. You're trying it based on what you've read. This is the way you would answer the question. If you change your mind by the end of the week, that's fine. If somebody replies to your stuff and you're like, whoa, yeah, I kind of missed that, that's fine. Perfection is not the expectation with discussions. What is the expectation is that you took time to read through and watch the material, the lecture material, or in supporting stuff for each week, and you did your best to answer the question, and you provided reasons for your answer or answers if there's multiple parts to it. That's the expectation. You really gave it an honest try. And then with the whole point is you're able to see what other people have posted at that point and go in and read what they've said, and then you post feedback or peer replies to at least 2 people's posts each week. So you make your post with your answer, your reasons. Everybody can read what you've put, and they can, some, if they choose to, can provide you with feedback. You may not get feedback from everybody every week, but eventually somebody will reply to your post. And you'll be able to interact with them if you want to, but you can interact with other people replying to a post. You can, jump on the bandwagon with them and ask questions of someone else's post. People can do that with your post. And keep in mind, you don't have to agree with everybody. That's the beauty of philosophy, is there will be disagreements. And not everybody thinks the same way about this stuff. That's fine. I mean, the skill is learning to be able to answer questions, make a claim, provide reasons for it, which transfers to any other career path that you may be on. It doesn't matter if you're in medical fields, engineering, science, technology, a humanities field, English, it doesn't matter, history, whatever your path may be in life, that knowing how to understand what a question is asking, provide an answer to it, and reasons for that answer is invaluable. It doesn't matter if you're going into government, law, whatever. It doesn't matter. I've picked this up. At this point, it's over 25 years ago when I got involved in philosophy. It has been invaluable in life. It's a way of thinking and processing information that's extremely helpful, because essentially everybody that ends up they stay in a job long enough, or they stay in a career long enough, or whatever vocation they have, or they just live life long enough, that knowing how to do this kind of stuff is very helpful. We live with other people, and other people, they make claims and they offer reasons, or they don't, which in some sense is way worse. But you'll be able to detect that. And you'll know, okay, somebody's made a claim here. They need to provide some reasons or evidence, and they're not doing it. This has tremendous impact on a person being able to know how to do this argumentation skill. And you get opportunity after opportunity every week to do that and practice it. And that's one of the key learning outcomes of a class like this. It's definitely philosophy, the topics and the ideas, but the skill is transferable anywhere. And so that's what you're practicing here. But all that aside, the key to it is around the middle of the week, you need to have read through the lecture stuff. You make an initial post and give reasons for it. Well, how do you post? Well, each of these things at the top of the discussion is a link. When you click on this, you'll be prompted to start a new thread or start a new post. You click that button and a text box appears where you can type in your answer and reasons. And then it'll have post, submit. It'll be a button labeled like that. You click on it, it goes and ends up on this forum, this board. And then, you'll be able to back out of it, go back in and see your post as well as everybody else's. Sometimes it takes D2L a little while to update so your post appears, but as soon as you've made one, you'll definitely be able to see what everybody else has posted. And then you can read their post, and each week you need to provide feedback or replies to at least 2 people's posts. You provide them with the type of feedback you yourself would like to receive. That's the easiest way to think about what peer replies are, and you need to do at least 2 of those each week. So essentially, you're interacting with discussions. You're doing 3 things with discussions each week. You're making an initial post around the middle of the week. Then you go in, read what other people have posted, and you provide feedback to posts made by at least 2 other people. You can reply to more than 2. That's fine. You can reply to 10. But 2 is the minimum of peer replies in order to be able to receive full credit for discussions. And I know this takes time for people to become familiar with and become oriented to the class, new class, things like this. That's fine. It'll take a week or 2 for things to settle out with everybody doing discussions. That's no worries. I understand it. We worked through it. But after the first 3-4 weeks, this just becomes a habit. You know what you need to do. You do it, and then you go forward with the class. And there's a description of these helpful comments about what's going on with this discussion. There's one for week 1 all the way through week 15. Like there's a week 2. But notice that these things differ. Like you have a larger prompt, but you just have that question. Then you have potentially helpful comments. And so, to go back to that, you start a new thread. You make your initial post by just clicking on the link and starting a new thread and filling it out with the text box and all that. Well, how do you make a peer reply? Is you just click on a peer's post, and you're going to do that in any way when you're trying to read people's posts. And at the bottom of a person's post will be a reply button. And you click that button, and then a box appears that you can type your reply in, and then you post it, submit it, just like you would your initial post. And that becomes clear after you do a few of these. The strangeness of it, whereas if you've never done an online class, it goes away really fast after you do a few of them. And so this week's questions, sometimes there's multiple questions in there. But each week does have a discussion. And so where are we? We're in assignments, discussions. Now, we've looked through assignments, discussions, Dropbox quizzes. We've seen these main 3 tabs. I mean, you can look through these others, but these are the 3 that you use the most. The final tab is content. So this is where the class is. Like if you're wondering, like where is the actual class material, like the lecture material, the things that I need in order to like the lecture material, what I need to be reading, watching as the week goes through. Yeah, and the D2L is really slow right now. It'll open. There it is. Sometimes that happens with the D2L server. It's no worries. But this is content. Like I click content and there's an overview. You can read through this. This is kind of like the zero starting point, like going back to zero or the very start. If you have not clicked on anything in content, then this is where you'll land when you first click on it. But as you go through various content and you go through some of these tabs, what shows up in content is over here on the right hand side of the screen. This side is the last place you were. And so if you're ever confused and you don't really know, you get disoriented inside content, you can always click this overview tab on the left hand side of the screen, come back to here, and you know that you're back at the 0 point, at the starting point. But let's look, what do we have exactly? Like all we did is click the content tab, this right here. We just click content. And what you can do is just kind of train yourself. When you click content, what's on the right hand side of the screen isn't as important to you when you're looking for something as is the left side of the screen. This is how you navigate, kind of like with YouTube, that it has a bar you can navigate over on the left-hand side. I don't know how many people actually use it, but inside the D2L, you definitely use the left-hand navigation bar in content. And if you notice, there's 3 like modules or folders. These are just like folders on your desktop, on a computer, that when you click on these things, there's things inside them. That's all it is. There's links, there's documents, things like that. So you can think of these as just the 3 main folders for the class. There's extra credit, course contents, getting started, course information. So let's just look at, say, extra credit, for example. When we click on this, it depends on how fast or slow D2L is. We'll get there eventually. But when we click on this, what will happen is it'll bring extra credit up on the screen here. And we'll be able to see it. Okay, there's extra credit. Now notice what we did is we just clicked on this tab and it's darker, a little darker than the background. And it opened on this right hand side of the screen. That's the way these tabs work, is you click on one and then it opens it over on this side of the screen. And one can notice, well, what's in extra credit? Well, there's 2 extra credit opportunities throughout the semester. The way to think about these things is they're extra. You don't have to do them, but they add points to your grade at the end of the semester after all other grades have been tallied. This is just additional points, up to half a letter grade if you do both of them successfully. So it's not a trivial amount of points. It can turn an 85 into a 90. It can turn a 75 into an 80. Or as a 55 into a 60, it can move your grade up by 5 points if you do both of these successfully. Both of these things are open now. You can do them anytime before up to the day they're due. So they're open today. You can access these things and complete them. But the thing is that you'll be able to do the first one, like this first extra credit opportunity, anytime throughout the semester. Just you'd want to make sure if you want to do it and secure the points to do it before this date. The same applies to extra credit too. I'm not going to read through what these are. You can read through them yourself. But those are just 2 opportunities you have throughout the semester. So it's worth remembering they're there. There's a folder for them. You can always do them. Just make sure if you want to do them that you do them by these dates and times. Anytime before up to these moments, you can do it. So what about the next tabs? The next one is we'll leap over course contents and go to this getting started course information. What's under that folder? And notice immediately something changed. When we clicked on this, it opened up 3 sub-tabs, 3 subfolders. And so that's something just to keep in mind. When you click on some of these tabs, they expand on the left-hand side of the screen. And inside this Getting Started course information, notice it opened up a subtab for course information, for D2L how-tos, and for student services. And as soon as D2L stops being so slow, it'll open and we'll be able to talk about this. Okay, we had clicked the Getting Started course information. It's open in the middle of the screen. Now, let's look through these subfolders within. Like, this is the main folder, the Getting Started course information, same as the tab. And then, so what the subfolders, we should have 3 that'll be that you scroll down to find. Well, the first one's course information. There's course information. See, these things match what's on the screen. And so if we look through what is in course information, well, there's a link to the course information video, the video you're currently watching. There's also a link to the syllabus. There's a link to the course schedule. There's a link to the textbook. See, all these things that are in the welcome news post. Like I said, you can always access stuff inside the class through various routes normally. And so there's links to all these. So later in the semester, if you want to look back at the syllabus and you're like, man, it was in that news post, but you're like, one way you can go instead of digging through news to find it, you can always go back to this Getting Started course information and you can find links to everything in that initial news post here. There's also a link that's net etiquette. Now, I would encourage everyone that if you've not participated in online classes before or posted or sent emails or whatever within an academic professional setting, and anybody who even has done that, it's worth checking out net etiquette, which is it gives you things that you may not even think about when you're communicating in an academic professional setting. Is that things like you typically just pick, like in terms of text color, you typically pick black or blue. Why? Because that's what people are accustomed to reading in books or on the internet, rather than like a neon green. Because people are not accustomed to reading things in that color on the screen. Sometimes it's hard for people to even see certain of the text colors you could choose. The same applies for fonts. Like if you picked a cursive font, or a highly decorated characters to write your message in, that can distract people from what you're actually trying to say. And in an academic professional setting, it's all about being able to write effectively and concisely so that someone can see they can read your words, and the words, the way they appear is not intruding on someone understanding what you're saying and comprehending it. You want people to be able to comprehend what you're saying and not be where they have to try to even see the letters on the screen, or be able to make sense of what's going on because they're highly decorative characters or whatever. That net etiquette talks about that. You always write in complete sentences with punctuation marks where there's supposed to be capital letters at the front of a sentence. Things that we know, but in a world where we write text messages and you may use a lot of abbreviations, you don't do that in an academic professional setting unless it's abbreviations that everybody in a particular job know. You just write in complete sentences, and you just write it in the most painfully boring, plain Times Roman Calibri font, and then just standard blue-black font. That it goes through that stuff, and it may seem like, well, yeah, clearly that's what we need to do, but that's not clear to everybody, that's not done this before. So I would encourage everyone, check out that net etiquette link. And that'll set you on the right path to writing discussion posts, for example. The next thing is distance learning policies. Everybody that's taking this class, while you're taking an online class, these policies apply to you. There's also a link to that any questions, but like I said, just send me your questions through email. There's also links to the instructional package course information sheet if you prefer to use these 2 documents rather than the syllabus and the course schedule. The next thing is this D2L how-tos. Like, if this is your very first online class, I would encourage you to go ahead and just watch this 30-40 minute video, the virtual tour. Then you can use this tip sheet. It just helps you see how D2L this interface, this graphical interface we see on the screen, it just helps you understand how information is organized in it and how to find things. That if you've never done an online course before, it can be extremely helpful. As well as we're doing essentially a virtual tour right now in this video. I'm showing you where things are, how to find things. We're doing that, but we're just doing it for this class. This video does it for all of D2L, however your instructor might create the course. So it's useful to be familiar with it. The next thing is the student services. These are just a few of the services offered by the college. There are at least 100 more. But these are just some of the top tier ones, like Tech Central. This is like admissions. If you have some technical issues with your computer, if you do happen to have technical issues, definitely send me an email. Let me know what's going on because I'll be able to help you. Now, especially if you click on a link in this class and it doesn't work, you get like a 404 error. I'm the only person that's going to fix that. So you definitely need to let me know if you run into any technical difficulties, so you're not just, fall off the grid and I don't know what's going on, why assignments aren't being completed, things like that. So, but there's Tech Central, there's services for distance learning students, that's services for people in an online class, Student Success and Tutoring Center, there's library information, there's Testing Center. We don't use that in this class. All of our quizzes, exams are completed inside this D2L interface, but that may be relevant for some of your other classes. And then there's like accessibility, disability services. If this applies to you, you get in touch with these people. They get in touch with me. Then we work out accommodations. There's also Title IX services. There's also counseling services. That's just a few. Like I said, there is 100 or more student services that once you paid your tuition, you have access to a tremendous amount of resources. And to find them, you would just go to the school's main website, if they're not listed in those links. So at this point, we have looked through the extra credit folder. We've looked through this getting started course information folder. Well, what if I want these tabs to go away? Like say, okay, I've looked through this. I want this to collapse back. Well, to do that, all you have to do is click Table of Contents. And you notice that they immediately collapsed back. So we're back to the top 3 tabs. And that matters because when we click on this course contents, it's going to expand tremendously. So let's click on this. This is where the lecture material is for each week. This is where you go to find what you need to be reading, find the videos you need to be watching each week. There's also links to the discussions. There's links to the quizzes here. And so how would you find like your material for, say, this week? Well, you're going to end up being on the course homepage when you first log into the class. Just click Content, then look to the left side of the screen and click the course contents folder. And then you just scroll down and you see there's a folder for every week. And then just click week 1 because that's what we're in. If we're in week 2, you'd click week 2. And so we clicked week 1, introductory. There's the dates, and yep, it appears at the top of the screen. At this point, we're in the week 1 folder, and then it gives you a sort of notification about attendance identity verification when they're both due. Then it gives you some pages from the textbook that are voluntary. You can read them, but you don't have to. But they're useful if you do. This is the stuff you definitely want to read and watch this week, though. This What is Philosophy handout, the video, and the timeline. You don't have to read through the whole timeline. I talk about it in the video. This is just a sort of starter thing of just being able to get a picture of how broad the history of philosophy, or in a sense, the time of the ancient Greeks is, and a little before them. But in terms of like, what is the main lecture material? It's this video and this handout. It normally makes the most sense. You can watch the video first. You can read the handout first. You can read the handout and then watch the video. Either one works, but typically the video is giving you an overview of that handout and kind of some of the main ideas so that you have something to hold on to in your mind when you go into the handout. And like I said, this course is in the process of being completely rebuilt across the past few semesters. So there isn't a lecture video for every week, but there is one for at least 10 weeks of the course. And so anytime there's a lecture video, you do want to check it out, look at it. It will give you a heads up on what's coming up in the handout, and then you read this handout. And there's one for every week. There's also a link to the weekly discussion, like the week 1 discussion. And then there's also, there's not a quiz this week, but there's also extra, this voluntary material that if you go through this week's material and you're like, man, I want to learn more about this. I want to learn more about philosophy in general. Well, then there's some links to some stuff that's mentioned in the lecture material. I mean, these specific things aren't mentioned, but you can watch these videos and you'll get even a broader sense. And there's many more that could be picked and added to that, but that just gives people something to start out with. That's the way education works. You give people something that they can stand on to then go forward and learn more as you go through school. But this is the week 1 stuff. And like I said, the main things you're doing this week is the attendance, sending me an email, hey, I'm in your class, doing your selfie with your photo ID, uploading that. And then you do the discussion, which the link to it's right here. You also saw that you can get to this discussion through discussions. But what content is, like when you go content and then you go to course contents, you open it up and you're inside a weekly folder, that you're in a one-stop shop. That if you read through and do everything inside the folder for a week, you've done the assignments. So some people just do the whole class through content because it's convenient. You read, you do the lecture material, then your discussion's right there. And then say if we go to, say, week 2, just to see how it plays out when you have a week with a quiz. So with week 2, that you see the topic changes, the dates changed, but you have your lecture material, a video, and a handout. And you'll have right under that, you have some extra videos and stuff to check out, another document. And then you come across, you have your discussion for week 2. But then underneath it, if you scroll below it, there'll be your quiz for week 2. And then there'll be the voluntary stuff, like that you don't have to read or check out, but it's there if you're interested in it. And it says voluntary. So when all the actual required stuff, when you've reached the end of it, you'll have reached the quiz. But that's how they're laid out. Every week's laid out basically the same, that you have your week, the dates, the topic, then you have your lecture material at the top of the folder, and then you have your discussion, and then you'll have your quiz. And like I say, content's one-stop shop. That if you do this stuff inside content, which you have to go here to get to lecture material for each week, that you go under this content tab and then course contents and then go to the actual folder for each given week, week 2, 3 on down, that if you do all the stuff inside the folder, you've done all the stuff for that week. That's just the easiest way to think about it. Then there is a module folder for the midterm exam. And then there will be one for the final exam all the way at the bottom. Yep, there's one for that too. So that's how you get the content. So just to review that, well, first of all, say you want to collapse this. Say that, okay, yeah, this is great. I got all these folders here. That's kind of distracting. If you want to just collapse all this stuff, you can always just click Course Contents, and it closes all the folders back up. And then if you want to just get back to 0, you can always just click Overview. Yep, and you end up back at 0. So we're almost done with this video. The last thing we need to do is go back to Course Home. Yep, we're back at the course home page. And the last thing we need to do is talk through some parts of the syllabus. So if you click this link to the syllabus, this is in that first news post. You click the link to the syllabus, you will encounter a document that looks like this. So what is this? The syllabus, it gives you just an overview of the course, the policies, descriptions of assignments, things like that. So it's the course name, it tells you the semester, it's full start, means 15 weeks and 3 credit hours. But so if we keep going here, what do we have? We have my name, have my email address, office hours. Yep, the school requires that I post office hours for each week. The way to think about office hours is office hours are whenever you need them to be. Everything with this class, given that it's a 100% online class, begins with email. You send me an email, ask your questions. I see your email, and within 12 hours to 48, I'll reply to it. And then that's our office hours. Now, if we need to do more than that, say that that you have multiple questions, and I think it'd be more efficient. What I'll do is ask you for a phone number and times that work around your schedule, and we'll schedule a time to talk through whatever it is on the phone. It's fine with me. Email, phone, I do each one multiple, email all the time throughout the semester, but I do talk to people through the phone sometimes during the semester when it's the most efficient way to do it. Sometimes the chain of email tag just it's taking up too much of everybody's time when we could just talk through it on the phone and be done and everything's resolved. So office hours take place through email, they take place through the phone. But Wednesdays at 1 to 6. Will I necessarily be sitting at a computer at 1 to 6 p.m. Wednesday waiting on a potential email? Not necessarily. That you send me, I can be available during these times, this time window. I can absolutely be available during that time if someone sends me an email and says they need me to be. But otherwise, we may need to schedule a phone conversation for a Friday. That's fine. We'll do that. So think of office hours as these are what's posted. But office hours begin whenever you send me an email, and we go from there. So office hours are whenever you need them to be. The next thing is that, PDF textbook. Like I said, we will use some of it. You don't have to buy a textbook for the course. All that you need is provided through the lecture material, and we do use some out of that OER, that online, that Open Educational Resource textbook. The course rationale description, you can read through that. The prerequisites, the way you do that, if you look through these and you don't know if you met these or not, just get in touch with your academic advisor. Whoever helps you register for classes, get in touch with that person. If you haven't met some of these requisites, they will get in touch with me. We'll work through it. This is no worries. We'll figure things out. But you get in touch with your academic advisor. That's the person that will know whether you've done this or not. The next thing is sometimes the school requires that online students take a sort of orientation class, or they watch an orientation video. If you don't know what that is, or you haven't done it, or you don't know if you need to do it, once again, get in touch with your academic advisor. They'll let you know. The next thing is this code of student conduct, rights, and responsibilities. This applies to the entire college. It's sort of just the policies and procedures of the whole college. So it's worth looking through that and just familiarizing yourself with those things. Technical requirements, given that this is a completely online course, you do need reliable internet access, the ability to access D2L, to access my HTTC, which is how you get to D2L, and then the email, college email or an external email that you consistently check throughout the semester that is going to be there from the beginning of the semester to the end. You do need that in order to do the course. That can be at a library, it can be at your personal residence, it can be wherever you are, as long as you're able to have a computer to get to the class, do the assignments, send me an email when you need to, you're good. You have all you need to do this class. And then the attention, I'm definitely here to enhance your educational experience. The learning outcomes, these are what happens when you put your work in. I put my work in. At the end of the semester, this is just the bare minimum of what you'll be able to do by the end of the semester, assuming you put forth your effort. And I put forth mine. But you'll be able to do so much more than this. But like I said, one of the key transferable skill sets that you can take from a class like this, and it doesn't matter what field you go into. Like I do philosophy stuff and I do electrical engineering stuff, mechanical stuff. The skill set of being able to know when a claim is being made, knowing reasons are being offered for that claim, being able to look at those things and see, do those reasons actually support that claim? Things like that. It's an invaluable skill, no matter what you do. I'm a hybrid and I go across many academic disciplines and many just professional and technical disciplines. Knowing how to critically examine and evaluate claims and arguments, just in general, whether it's by key figures in the history of philosophy, or it's your boss, or your employer, or your coworker, or just a family member, knowing how to do this is extremely helpful in life. And you can pull that skill set out of this class, even though, and maybe never use it again in the context of philosophy people. So there is skills that come from this class that they're not emphasized nearly as much as in a lot of other classes. That's the reason for this, a class like this one. So there's a grading system. It's 9-10 point scale, pretty standard. Grades, how do they work? Well, your grades, you have 15 weeks, have a discussion each week. Have 13 quizzes. You don't have a quiz this first week, and you don't have one when the midterm's in play, but you do have a quiz all the other weeks. And you have a midterm exam, final exam, and you have the argumentative essay, the writing assignment. The way this works is starting out day one, you have 0 points. And as you complete assignments, say you do this week's discussion successfully, you get 100%. You do your initial post, your peer replies, you do them, well. They meet the standards, they're done. You get a 100 for this week. Well, what does that mean in grade points? Well, you got a 2. You're +2. If you do the discussion the next week and you do fine on it, you got a 4. And then you do the discussion the next week and you get it 100%, you got a 6. And so you're starting out with 0 points and you're adding up final grade points as you go through the semester. And these are the indicators of the final grade points over here in parentheses. But in the end, it totals up to 30% of your grade for discussions, 26% for quizzes, 19% for exams, and then 6% for the essay, or 6 final grade points. And that makes sense. Excuse me. As you see your grades update, you'll understand what that is. Discussion posts, we've already talked about this. You make an initial post around Wednesday, 7 p.m. to Thursday, the early part of Thursday. Sometime in that window, middle of the week, you make an initial post. Then after you do that, you read what other people have posted and you reply to with helpful feedback to at least 2. There's these various things. You can read through this on your own. The main thing is you always want to include reasons for whatever you post, and whether it's an initial post or it's peer reply. And a lot about reasoning is talked about in this week's lecture material. So, if you're still not sure about what I mean by that, what reasoning, arguments, that may be all new terminology to you, well, watch this week's lecture video and and read the handout. It'll become more clear to you. But the idea is you want to be, if you won't get credit for a peer reply. That's the one thing to keep him to know, is that it's not good enough to just say, I agree, and then say nothing else, or I disagree and say nothing else in a peer reply when you're doing feedback. Tell them why you agree with what they're saying. What example, what reason, what of all the things they said, worked, or what do you think didn't work, and why don't you think it worked? It's fine to disagree with people. You're not going to agree with everybody in a class like this. That's fine. Just tell them what your concerns are. Does the reason or evidence they provided not seem to be sufficient to support the claim they're making? Things like that. And you'll get a chance to practice this over and over throughout discussions. There's not a set number of sentences or paragraphs that are necessary to complete the weekly discussion assignment. It's just you answer the question, provide reasons, then you make peer reply and give them feedback. However many sentences that takes you to do. Some people write lesser, some people write more. It's possible to complete the assignment by writing typically 3 to 7 sentences for a question and reasons, and then peer replies. You can try to work that. where it's like total like 21 or so sentences. Some people are able to do that. Some people can write very effectively, very concisely. Some people, it takes 3-4 paragraphs or a whole page's worth of text to communicate what they need to say. And that's fine. Whatever it takes you to answer the questions, do the assignment is however many it takes. Finally, participating in weekly discussions, as I've kind of emphasized multiple times at this point, is that it's critical. If you want to develop this skill with analyzing argumentation, crafting your own, being able to interact with other people in this particular way, you getting started and getting those initial posts up, getting involved in the discussions by around the middle of the week, and then doing peer replies from, say, Wednesday to Saturday, that's how you learn the skill. Also, I will reply to a few people's posts each week. I don't reply to everybody each week, but I interact with discussions. And even if I haven't replied to your post, if you see that I've replied to somebody else's post, it's always worth the time to read my reply to somebody else's post, because there'll always be information in there that helps people start thinking even more, kind of going the next steps. And it's useful to see that. The weekly quizzes, they're 4 questions, multiple choice, true, false. When you open them up, you have 20 minutes to take them. Like I said, every week besides the first week and week 8, which is a midterm week, you have a weekly quiz. The midterm final exam, you 38 questions. You have an hour and a half to complete each of them. The most important thing to notice is that the midterm exams through weeks 2 through 7, the final exams weeks 8 through 15, meaning that you don't have a cumulative final in this course, that once we get to the midpoint of the semester, you take the midterm. You don't have to try to remember everything from weeks 1 through 7. You can kind of reset your mind and focus on weeks 8 through 15. Now, it's great if you remember everything in the class from day 1. That's awesome. But just to make the load a little less potentially burdensome on people, you just focus on weeks 8 through 15 after the final exam. The next thing is, this is an entirely online course. All the discussions, quizzes, everything are done inside D2L. It's best to try to take quizzes and exams on an actual physical computer, a desktop, laptop, rather than a cell phone. Cellular communication, and even with the data, with the internet, that there are delays and various protocol things that you don't see operating. It may seem instantaneous to you, but there's delays that sometimes those things with cell phone stuff that confuses the D2L testing software. And the most common thing is if you try to take a quiz or an exam on a cell phone, the most common problem you can run into will be you won't be able to advance to the next page. And then the quiz, the timers run out, and you end up having to reset it, get it reopened. It's better just to avoid all of that together and just take the quizzes and exams on a physical computer the first time through, and you won't run into any difficulties. Finally, there are timers associated with the quizzes and exams, and how do they work? Well, when you agree to take a quiz inside D2L, and it gives you a chance to back out before you fully get into it. But once you get into that thing and questions are on the screen, you have that set amount of time. 20 minutes for quizzes, hour and a half for midterm, hour and a half for final. And if you log out, say you go in and work 5 minutes, log out, come back in 5 hours later, the quiz will be locked down where the only thing it'll let you do is turn it in. You won't be able to add anything to it. So the key to it is once you get ready to do a quiz, just set the 20 minutes aside, do the quiz, be done. Don't log in, log out, wander off from it. Just focus on it and just do it and be done. The same thing applies to exams. Set the hour and a half aside, do it. You may not need the hour and a half, but just block out that time so that there's not a whole bunch of interruptions, because you don't want those timers to expire and then you're not through. Because then the only way to deal with that is for the whole thing to be reset, and you may not see the same questions the next time through that you saw the first time through. That's just something to keep in mind. So, you just need to do it and not fall afoul of the timers. The argumentative essay, it's straightforward. It's 3 to 5 page minimum. And what it is you're just expanding upon a discussion post. And it's a standard argumentative essay where you have an introductory paragraph with a thesis statement like I will argue something. And then you give a preview of the reasons, and then you explain them in the body paragraphs, and then the concluding paragraph is just the same intro paragraph, just stated in past tense. In the intro, it's what you will do. In the concluding, it's what you have done. So the intro paragraph and the concluding paragraph, if you can write an intro paragraph, you got your concluding paragraph. Just turn it to past tense. Works every time. And then philosophy and argumentation. You always tell people what you're going to do. You do it. Then you tell them what you've done. And you can look through this, and it's about, it's always on the weekly discussion questions. Basically, any of them from week 2 through 15. I mean, week 1, we're doing a lot of introductory stuff. So you wouldn't want to use it as the basis of this essay, but weeks 2 through 15, any of them can serve as a starting point of this. And all you're really doing is expanding upon a claim you make or an answer to one of those questions. And you don't have to have the same answer that you had in the discussion. You may shift and argue for the opposite thing in the essay. That's fine. But once you start doing discussions, you can look back at this and it will start to come together of what you need to do with this argumentative essay. And you can always email me, let me know if you have any questions about it as we get closer to it. It's due much later in the semester. Makeup policy, that if you do miss the discussion, send me an email. We'll go from there. That quizzes and exams, they can be made up, or at least the midterm can be in quizzes. But the final exam, there's just not enough time at the end of the semester. When the class finishes, the final exam's turned in, I have to update grades across multiple classes. That takes time, and there's really just not enough time to make up the final. But keep in mind, with all these things, you have 7 days to do them. So the final exam is where you want to do it and be done with it. But the other stuff, if you have acceptable documented reasons, just let me know. We'll get stuff reopened for you. Disruptive, disrespectful behavior, like it's mentioned here, you can look at net etiquette. It helps you out there. But the key to this is just don't do it. It's not that the disrespect is the major problem. I mean, that's not nice, but sometimes people are not nice to each other. I mean, there's a human quality to that. The disrespect isn't as critical as far as the class goes as the disruption. That if you end up and you read someone's post and your response is, well, that's the stupidest thing I've ever read. Even if that's true, there's a different way to say it. You can typically say anything you want to say to another person. It's in how you say it. And so that's just something to always keep in mind. And so that if you think what somebody's written is it fits within these descriptors, well, you clearly just disagree with what they've said. I mean, at the most generic level, you disagree. Well, what is it about what they said that you disagree with? Was it an example? Was it a reason? Is it a particular 1 or 2 sentences in there? A claim that was made? Just tell the person, yeah, I think this example doesn't work the way you may think it does. And here's why. And give them the reasons. That's helpful feedback. And you never had to be disrespectful. You never had to be disruptive, that if you think there's some problem in somebody's reasoning, point it out, help them. That's the thing. Instead of launching at them, I'll try to help them. If you think there's a better way they could have done it. So this is just and if this was, depending on the severity of this, there's warnings, and eventually a person can be removed from the whole school, depending on the severity of it. So it's best just not to do it. As far as plagiarism, cheating, that's the same thing. Just don't do it. And plagiarism, what is it? It's that you take something that's not yours. You didn't think it up. You didn't write it out yourself. And it's somebody else's, or even if it's some AI software. I mean, I work with this kind of stuff, this software. I know it when someone's doing it. I mean, I can see it. I've created this stuff, and with various things working in philosophy of mind. that, that's not your stuff. That's not your ideas. That's a software generated guess the next word ideas. It may be fun. It may actually answer a question, but it's not yours. So the thing is plagiarism is anytime you take something that's not yours, written or whatever, you put your name on it, turn it in as if it is yours. That's a form of idea, word theft. And in the end, what's so problematic about it is that you're not learning the material at that point. You're wasting your time. I mean, sure, a person may end up with a degree, but it doesn't mean anything. And it's just a waste of time. And this is like a 101 level class. You don't have to, I mean, the ideas in a philosophy class, yes, they can be challenging. Yes, they can be confusing at times, but it's possible to understand enough to do the assignments and do them on your own and just see what other people think. I mean, that like I said, the expectation is not perfection, is that you're giving it an honest try. And now you have to get quiz and exam questions correct, but in terms of discussions, which is where this stuff mainly would come up a lot of times, this is just not necessary. And if it's substantiated, you're definitely going to get a 0 on the assignment. And depending on the severity, you can read through this. You can be removed from the whole school, goes into your permanent record. If it follows you around, then it's hard to even get in another school. It's just not worth it. It's just not worth it. The point is to learn and do it with your own mind. Now, attendance, it says you need to attend 3 times. But does that mean you have to log in 3 times? No. You can go in around the middle of the week, make your initial post, look at what other people have posted, provide 2 peers of feedback. You're done. You've attended 3 times. But you go back in at the end of the week, see if people have replied to your post. You may want to reply back, interact with them. But you can do all this in one login event, if you set it up right. The next thing is 80% minimum of attendance is necessary to get credit for the course. That is a school's policy based on state and federal law. That means you can't miss over 3 weeks, 3 whole weeks in the semester. If you do, it's not my policy, it's the school's policy that I have to follow, and actually state and federal stuff, that if you miss over 3 weeks and you don't make it up, you go week 4, I have to withdraw you from the class. It's not because I want to, it's just that's the requirements of the way the job works, and the way the college works. So definitely, if you're having some problems doing the material, let me know and we'll work through it. Just don't drop off the radar for 4 or 5 weeks and then and then I have to withdraw you. That's just the way it is. So the next is, the attendance verification, identity verification, you do that this week. We've talked about all that. Technical issues, like I've said, if you click on a link, it doesn't work, let me know. I'm the only person that's going to fix it. Sometimes that happens. I set the links up at the beginning of the semester. Websites change. People take up and pull down their videos from, YouTube or wherever. So sometimes that happens. It's not the end of the world. I can fix it. We'll do workarounds, do whatever we need to do. If you click on a link and it doesn't work, let me know and I'll fix it. Now, these student resources, these are the same things that links are provided to inside the Getting Started folder under content. But these are some phone numbers, websites as well. You can look through all this stuff. No need to talk through it. Now, at this point, we have reached the end. We've reached the end of this video, but I look forward to this is a great time to go ahead and send me an email. Hey, I'm in your class. Get it out of the way. You'll be starting well. It's also a good time to go ahead and do the identity verification. You could get that done today and be through with it and then get started reading the lecture material and thinking about the discussion. But I look forward to interacting with everyone through email and discussion this semester. And until then.